Alexandre Pantoja has won 6 fights in a row and has now successfully defended the flyweight championship twice, this time over Steve Erceg in his home country of Brazil. Pantoja is the king of the 125-pound division. His reign carries on. Doesn't it just feel like every single flyweight championship fight that we've been getting over the past 3 or 4 years has been a banger for 25 straight minutes or less? We talk the quadrilogy between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo. We talk about Figueiredo winning the title and defending it against Alex Perez. We talk about Moreno versus Caio France, Pantoja versus Moreno versus Royval, now versus Erceg. All of these championship bouts at flyweight have been technical, high level mixed martial arts contests. It was no different here at UFC 301. For 25 minutes, Pantoja and Erceg went toe to toe, tit for tat. Pantoja comes out with the unanimous decision, 48-47 on 2 scorecards and 49-46 on the third scorecard. He defeats Steve Erceg, hands him his first UFC loss and his first loss in like 11 or 12 fights in total. So I will just say, on the side of the losing effort, which is Steve Erceg, what a fight that he put up to win rounds against Pantoja. And, you can look at those 2 scorecards that had it 48-47 and say, well, if Erceg doesn't shoot for takedowns in round 5 and just keeps it standing, he more than likely leaves UFC 301 with the title. I think when he goes back and watches film over this fight, that is what he will be most upset with himself about. You could even sense it in the post-fight interview with Daniel Cormier. He already had realized before he had even left the cage the mistakes that he had made. And I think that shows just how great of a talent we have here with Steve Erceg in this flyweight division. Yes, he got this ranked number 10 in the world in only his 4th UFC fight, only his 14th total professional fight. But I think after this showing, you can't say that he did not deserve it or that he just got outclassed. He looked like a championship caliber fighter in the cage at UFC 301. So my hat is off to Steve Erceg from Western Australia, because we will see him back fighting for the title one day. But the night belonged to the reigning defending champion, Alexandre Pantoja, who continues this amazing stretch that he is on. At 35 years old, he is now got that victory and title defense. He maybe can put that narrative to rest, at least until his next competition. What a performance. All grit, all toughness, all heart. When it looks like Pantoja is gassed and has nothing left to offer, he somehow pulls it out of the fire and wins, for example, round number 5 on all 3 scorecards. So it really is just a credit to how, headstrong he is, mentally tough, and he's just so well-rounded. Yes, Erceg got the better of him on the feet, but it wasn't just an outclass type of battle when they were standing. And in the grappling, he showed that was what was the deciding factor. He got the big takedowns and control time when needed. There were some fantastic grappling sequences and transitions in this fight between these two, and I would love to see him run it back in the future one day, whether that's for the title or not. But Pantoja sits atop the throne. He defends in Brazil in front of his hometown crowd. What could be next year? He's hinted at wanting to take some time away. We're in May. He's had a pretty active last 10 months. He won the title last July and has defended it twice since then. Maybe we get him at the very end of 2024, but potentially even not until 2025. And it wouldn't be that crazy, because maybe this division just has a few things to play out. I think the easiest kind of thing to do here would be to pair up Amir Albazi and Muhammad Mokaev. I think whoever would win that would be a clear-cut number 1 contender. And then, as I talked about last week, because we had the flyweight main event with Alex Perez knocking out Matheus Nicolau, he could fight maybe Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno, or Kai of France. So that's kind of what I would like to see as Pantoja takes some time away to let the division play out and spend time with his family. Let's run Mokaev and Amir Albazi, and let's get Perez in there with probably Brandon Royval. To be honest with you, Royval was in attendance last night. He's coming off of victory against Brandon Moreno. I just worry that since they just fought in December and have already fought 2 times prior with Pantoja, I just said his name really weird, with Pantoja beating Royval both times, it might take another victory or 2 for Raw Dog to get back in there for a title. So if he were to fight maybe Alex Perez, who's coming off of that knockout against Nico Lau, we do Albazi versus Mokaev, and then we can take Steve Erceg and pair him with who he originally called out in Brandon Moreno when he won in March, or he can go up against Kaikar France. I think that is a perfect kind of storm and matchmaking session, if you will, come Tuesday morning for the UFC. If you guys can't get that situated, give me a call. I can come out to Vegas and give my thoughts as well. But I think that's a pretty good idea for what can happen throughout the remainder of 2024 for the flyweight division, while the king, Alexandre Pantoja, lets it all play out. So be sure to let me know in the comments what you think should be next for the champion, Alexandre Pantoja, and the challenger in this circumstance, Steve Erceg. And we will now flip focus to the rest of the UFC 301 main card and some prelim action. We start in the co-main event. The King of 125 defended in the main event, and the King of Rio defended his spot, his name, his moniker in the co-main event. Welcome back, Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo may have retired from MMA in August of 2022 after losing to Merab Dvalishvili, but now he's back, and he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. He had a shutout performance, nearly perfect, against Jonathan Martinez at UFC 301. Outside of a couple good shots and moments for Jonathan, this was a clear shutout, 30-27 on all 3 scorecards for the King of Rio, the 37-year-old former featherweight champion, numerous time title defender. Jose Aldo is a bona fide legend, a bona fide Hall of Famer. Of course, he got inducted last year. Everything in the sense of the word, or the words mixed martial artist, that is Jose Aldo to a T. Now, he came back here out of retirement, gets a victory against the number 12 ranked bantamweight in the world, someone who in Jonathan Martinez had won 6 consecutive fights, finishes in 2 of his last 3. What do we do here? Because he came back to finish out his UFC contract, Jose Aldo. This was his last fight on his deal. He fights it out. He gets a fantastic victory in Brazil. 4 of his last 5, as I said, that he's won. Clearly, yeah, he's 37, but he can still get the job done against young talent such as Jonathan Martinez, who was surging. We got to bring him back. UFC re-signed Jose Aldo to like a legend deal. I know the WWE they do this with some guys. They just did it with The Undertaker where they sign legend deals. Let's start the trend here with Jose Aldo and do that. I want to see Aldo versus Dominic Cruz, 2 OGs of the lower weight classes, 135 and 145. 2 pioneers of the lower weight classes who have been champion in their respective divisions, defended the title multiple times in their respective divisions, competed in multiple divisions, yet they've always avoided each other. Not purposefully. I'm just saying their careers have never coincided. They have never matched up against each other. Now is the time to do that with Jose at 135 pounds. We obviously know that's where Dominic Cruz competes at, and where he's been the champion at before is bantamweight. Legend versus legend, and Dominic Cruz is still ranked number 10, if I'm not mistaken, in the bantamweight division, number 11, excuse me. So why not do it? It makes sense in terms of the rankings, where they are in their careers, competitively, the status of which they both have built themselves up to. You got to do Jose Aldo versus Dominic Cruz. And the first step is for the UFC to bring back Jose for another new contract. Alexa, play Return of the Mac, because Anthony Smith is back in the win column. He snatches Vitor Petrino's neck and snatches away his perfect record with a first round, 2 minute on the dot, guillotine choke submission. Anthony Smith turns back the clock at 35 years old and has now won 2 of his last 3 fights. He's showing that he still has gas left in the tank, not only to compete against veterans like Khalil Roundtree, Johnny Walker, Magomed Ankalaev, who were losses, Ryan Spann, who he's beaten twice, but he can turn back the clock and beat a surging, in their prime, undefeated beast like Vitor Petrino and make it look kind of easy. Anthony, through the 2 minutes we got to see, didn't really get hit or face relevant danger and snatched the neck of Vitor. What a huge win to go from winning 2 of your last 3 to, had he lost here, losing 2 of his last 3 or 5 of his last 6 or whatever that, or 4 of his last 5, pardon me. This was a huge moment for Anthony Smith to prove haters wrong, which there seem to be so many of these days, and everything in between. What a big win for Anthony, for his career, to hold his spot in the rankings, and to just show he has that dog mentality still. When a lot of people have mentioned maybe it's time to hang up the gloves, he proves that narrative wrong. What do we do next for Anthony? Time will tell. Light heavyweight isn't all that deep of a division. Being that he just fended off an undefeated prospect like Petrino, he probably can get another crack at a top 10 ranked guy. Who comes off the top of my head that he hasn't fought? Maybe a Volkan Uzdemir or a Nikita Krylov, maybe even an Alexander Rakic, since he returned at UFC 300 but faltered to Yuri Prohaska. I think any of those 3 guys is perfect for a next fight for the former title challenger, Anthony Smith. And we will finish the conversation with 2 back-to-back middleweight scraps. We first start with Michel Pereira, who has won 8 fights in a row, 3 straight finishes. This man is a destroyer. Pereira had won 5 straight fights at 170 pounds before missing weight when he was originally scheduled to fight Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but then bounced back, moved up to middleweight, and has won 3 straight fights, 3 straight finishes. We got to give this man a ranking next to his name, and please give him a ranked opponent while we're at it, UFC. Chris Curtis, Jack Hermanson, Roman Dolidze, any of them. I know Roman Dolidze is even on the UFC 302 card, if I'm not mistaken, in New Jersey. Pereira turned around quick for this one. Can we get him back to the States and fight Roman Dolidze on short notice? Listen, he doesn't have to do that, but I'm just saying he is deserving of a top 15, dare I say a top 10 opponent such as Dolidze after this absolutely astonishing win streak that he is on. He has been able to still acquire big victories over big names and even get finishes while conserving that gas tank that he used to just deplete and what caused him to lose some early fights in the UFC. He can still go wild at the weigh-ins, at the press conferences. He still did a backflip in this fight against Potieria, but it was at least when he was going for the finishing sequence after he had already injured him instead of just doing cart flips after throwing a couple jabs. Michel Pereira, at 30 years old, he has 44 professional fights now, but he's somehow just entering his prime. Please give this man a ranked opponent. And Tuesday morning, go ahead and give the guy a ranking next to his name. And from one middleweight fight, we go to another where the 14th ranked Caio knocked out the number 13 ranked former light heavyweight turned middleweight Paul Craig in the second round, 2 minutes and 10 seconds in. Caio has not lost since his second professional fight. He is now 16-1. He is undefeated in the UFC, sitting at 6-0. He went 2-0 on the Contender Series in 2021. He's beaten Abus Magomedov. He's beaten Paul Craig, Michael Oleksichuk, Armen Petrosian. This guy is a legitimate talent at 185 pounds and will be a title challenger one day. The fighting nerd, as he likes to say, 31 years old, in his prime right now. Let's just talk more of the middleweight division. I just pointed out names for someone like Michel Pereira. They could even fight each other. I'd rather them stay away from each other, being that they're fellow countrymen of Brazil. Maybe one day they fight, but just not yet. Caio can fight any of those names that I mentioned. Hermanson, Dolidze, Anthony Hernandez, that would be a banger of a fight. Any of those names make sense. He has to move up. He has to progress. Imavov is booked. Costa is booked. He could go as high as maybe fighting Brendan Allen. We know that Brendan Allen beat Paul Craig. Caio Borralho just beat Paul Craig. They both finished Paul Craig. Maybe we could match those two grappling aces up with one another and see if they have a striking battle. Instead, Brendan Allen's coming off of a victory just a few weeks ago when he fought Chris Curtis. He's won 7 straight fights. So 6-fight win streak, 7-fight win streak, fight night main event. Book it, please. Brendan Allen, Caio Borralho, and then Michel Pereira heading to New Jersey on a month's notice versus Roman Dolidze. Bam. They both get top 10 opponents next. And then there were some other good finishes and fights on the card, but I have to just showcase and mention one more name before we finish up today, and that is Mauricio Ruffy. He may have just had one of the most impressive UFC debuts we've ever seen, and especially if you want to make that box narrower and say Dana White Contender Series debuts, he may have taken the cake. 27 years old, 10-1 record. All 11 fights that he has have ended by knockout. Kill or be killed. He has won 5 straight fights, and he just knocked out Jamie Mullarkey in 4 minutes and 42 seconds. And in those 4 minutes and 42 seconds, put on a showcase. If you were to watch any of the prelim fights from UFC 301, if you didn't watch the card, you have to watch the performance that Mauricio Ruffy put on, because it was unbelievable. He had a crazy like scissor leg trip takedown, something you'd feel like you'd see in the WWE ring, and his hands were so crisp, and he's defensively sound. He's long, he's tall. At lightweight, this guy can be a problem. I know he's just a debutant. I know it was against Jamie Mullarkey, who has a storyline of being finished in the past, being knocked out specifically. But all of that aside, you can't watch this fight and not think that there is legitimate promise in Mauricio Ruffy, the 27-year-old out of Brazil. So that is it for my UFC 301 recap of the best fights and most meaningful results of the night. Be sure to give me all of your thoughts in the comments below, what you think is next for the winners, for the losers, everything in between. And if you enjoyed this recap, please be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, I'm breaking down and previewing the best fights, some X's and O's talk, and more importantly, the storylines for every fight, how we got there, what is at stake, and what could be in store in their futures. I recap such as this, the most meaningful results every week, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA and follow on your favorite audio listening platform if you like one long form podcast every Friday and Monday. Those are uploaded to platforms such as Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. Have a great one, and I will see you in the next video.